Oh,
Three of us. Welcome everyone to the Keshe Plasma Reactor group for Tuesday, March 27th, 2018. It's Tuesday. Once again, boy, Tuesday seems to come around awful quick. I hardly have time to prepare for Tuesday. The Wednesday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday seems to just go like that. But that's the way it is in life, it seems. So here we are, Keshe Plasma Reactor group. And yes, as John mentioned, there's the three of us. Fortunately, I think, or possibly fortunately, one of us is Lee Coates, who we love to call on for inspiration here in this group. So I'm calling on him to see if he's got anything to offer today for inspiration. How are you doing there, Lee? What's up in your life?
Tyke, bullet. Tyke or Ike? Ike.
Like
I like with an L.
today. How about you, Alper? You usually have something to say. What do you got going on in your life? Something that is interesting that you'd like to present to us today by any chance? Okay. So, no Lee, no Alper. John doesn't have anything today. If it's Ike, I apologize. I've been calling you like for a while, but Ike or like, if you have any questions or any comments, you could go ahead as well.
Finally got your audio back, Rick.
Ah, I hear your lovely voice, Lee. What's happening there? Is something problem with the audio?
I couldn't hear you for the last 5 minutes.
Oh,
Anyway.
well, when you came on, your microphone icon wasn't on, so I think your Zoom sound didn't kick in when you started the Zoom. It has to automatically connect. It probably didn't automatically connect to your sound.
I was testing my microphone when I come in, and then I test the microphone, then I join. So anyway, maybe you saw me before I actually hit the join button. Anyway, can you turn my video on?
Oh, I have to do that. Do I? Yeah, this is the new mode in the we're in webinar mode instead of Zoom room. So it's a little different. I have to allow the panelists to start the video now. So you're now allowed.
How about that? I just got to get it.
Okay, we see your video without your head, the headless man.
Here I am.
Yeah, very good. Yeah.
Okay, I don't got much to show tonight, but I've been, I guess last couple of months I've been busy doing internet marketing stuff and not doing Keshe stuff. So, and one of the reasons was I was using these bins to do my nano coating in, but they've been disintegrating on me.
Oh.
I put something big in there, that big coil I was going to put on my water line in the house, and it cracked out the end of it and had caustic soda all over the floor in my shop.
Really? It cracked the end of it as well?
Yeah, I think when the summertime, last summer, I leave it outside, and I think the sun deteriorates this type 5 plastic, or at least this bucket here. So
that makes
just a caution.
They have to put special dye in usually to make it a darker color in order to survive and so on.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I wasn't going to trust type 5 plastic again.
Maybe the caustic itself might have weakened the plastic. I mean, they do use caustic to break down plastic. That is one of the processes. For example, with the PET bottles, they use caustic to break them down, and over time it'll break it right down into its basic molecules.
I think it was more of the sun, because I had some cold caustic in this one inside, inside, and I used to, go from the soap to the vinegar, salt water, and then into the cold caustic before I put it into the hot caustic process.
Right.
So this one here is still strong enough. That's the lid of the one I had outside. So
Yeah. Well, it's a good
anyway,
word of caution. So you got a bunch of caustic in the bottom. It's not a good time to be cracking the side of the container. That's for sure.
So I've been searching all over the box stores to find the Type 2 plastic, and I couldn't find it in the box store. So I ended up having to buy these at the industrial packaging place, and so now I got some
Type
2 plastic.
What's Type 2? Can you remind us what Type 2 is? Is it polypropylene, poly something probably? Let me look it up.
You got some vents there on the side, or what are those marks? Lee, your mic is not working. Or
Yeah, your mic's off, Lee. We can't hear you. I don't think he can hear us either. Can you hear us, Lee? We can't hear you. Can't hear you, Lee. We cannot hear you. Anyway, I did. He's probably trying to fix it there now. I did look up the Type 2 plastic, and Type 2 plastic is high density polyethylene, or HDPE. It's usually opaque in color. This plastic is considered safe and has a low risk of leaching. So it's basically doesn't break down under exposure to extreme heat or cold as well. So again, it would be a better choice for outside, or I guess for a container that would be for caustic, I'm assuming.
Lee looks perplexed.
Oh, I lost my audio again.
Yeah, right.
We recovered it.
You may have to restart the Zoom or something in order to...
Well, I just pulled up the audio test thing, and I hit the test button for audio, and it played. And then all of a sudden, I started hearing you again.
Oh, okay.
I've been, last few times I was on, I was dropping out. So, and I think it might have been because I had the modem down in the basement. I moved it down the basement, so I wasn't getting the RF radiation beside me here in my office. So tonight I got it back up beside me, but I don't know why my audio is dropping out. Computer's
strange. Well, we do get problems from time to time with Zoom, and it's all of its thing. It's just it's funky sometimes.
Anyway.
Okay, well, did you want to try again then?
Yeah, what I was saying that last Thursday, Dr. Keshe threw us a bone there about flying our cars. So I said, I got to get back in the game here. Had to get my secret Gans down off the shelf and do a couple more experiments. But
right.
I pulled my bottle of Gans down off the shelf, and used to be a half-inch of Gans in the bottle, and now there's nothing. It was just clear liquid. So
can you show us, or do you have that? Do you want to show your video there, or is that?
Just a sec. I got to get it to the other room.
Oh, okay. The case of the disappearing Gans. That's curious. I'm not sure if you heard, Lee, but that type 2 plastic is HDPE, high density polyethylene.
Okay.
Ah, there we go. We see something there now. Let me get it lined up. There we go.
Gotta switch. Okay, so there used to be a half an inch of white Gans in the bottom of that.
Really?
And I pulled it off the shelf. I was going to go dip a coil in it and do my experiment, and it's all clear liquid now. So, and
Yeah,
that's
you better
Gans.
know
It was
that.
bismuth Gans made out of bismuth, is what that was, or it
It
was
was,
supposed to
wait a
be.
minute, bismuth Gans. That was the white powder. It wasn't CO2 Gans or something. Then
No,
you're talking
no,
about.
it was bismuth. I had made it
Okay.
about I had made it about a year ago, and it was been sitting up on the shelf with the rest of my Ganses, and I'm sure about 2 or 3 months ago it was still there, but
Interesting. So
it disappeared anyway. Don't know.
now you got some like concentrated bismuth Gans water that would be probably interesting to use in something or another.
Well, I don't know. The other fields may have changed it to something else. I don't know.
Well,
So
geez, I don't know.
we've had disappearing balls on our dynamic reactors, and I've got disappearing Gans.
Well, this is interesting. Yes, maybe there's
I've had
some.
sugar Gans sort of disappear on me, but I didn't know whether that's dissolved. I had iodine Gans. Actually, when I washed it, it disappeared, and it started out as a nice white Gans in the thing, but after I washed it four or five times, it disappeared. And what's the other? I tried to make borax Gans, but I never did get any Gans out of that. It just stayed clear.
Borax, right? Yeah, yeah. I was thinking of borax as well recently. The boron is an interesting substance to be using. In fact, they have new boron reactors that, nuclear type reactors that use boron, and they use boron because it doesn't result in nuclear byproducts like most nuclear reactors.
Interesting.
Yeah, yeah. So maybe there's a use there somewhere for bismuth and boron. Sounds like a
Anyway,
good.
what are your other people's thoughts there about using bismuth as this mirror that Dr. Keshe was alluding to?
Oh, absolutely. That really rings a bell, Lee. That makes sense. Bismuth is the most diamagnetic element,
In the matter
meaning
state, yeah.
it basically reflects a magnetic field. Yes.
So
So,
so the guy
so
was going to try just nano
the,
coating a coil and put it on top, but do you think it should be a coil, or should it be that actually has its own field, or should it be just a straight copper plate, nano coated copper plate that's dipped in bismuth Gans? That's another thing I could try. But anyway, that was
yeah, well,
my idea.
yeah, the original reactors that Keshe was working in ARM and so on back um, in Italy, they did have a shield, like a copper foil or copper, plate sort of shield over the entire reactor at one point, was one design. So that is possible, but I think that the idea is try to work more with the fields. So maybe if you had a coil on the top, like you're saying, that was, sort of dipped in bismuth or bismuth Gans on it, or maybe a glass or a plastic plate of bismuth water or something at the top, that bismuth water is a reflector plate, because water does reflect, like radio waves and microwaves and that kind of thing. Even laser can reflect off. So
Yeah.
maybe water has something to do with it as a crystal substance, you could say.
I'm a little reluctant to use Gans water for long-term experiment type stuff, because it's my opinion that you can start out with, say, with a Gans water of CO2, but you put it in the environment of different fields, it's going to take on the qualities of the other fields, and you lose your CO2 quality. So
Right.
that's why, if like in my health devices, the rings, I put the GANs in there. Then the water that's in there with the GANs is always getting charged up by the GANs.
Right. And it wouldn't
I
tend to
think it's
pick
the
up,
same thing when you water your plants with CO2. You can put some GANs water on the leaves, but if you outside, what happens when it rains? I mean, that's the water's all washed away. But if you got some GANs particles still around there, you've got the fields still. So just straight GANs water, I think, is something you use in the short term. Like if you're using it, like you're drinking it for a food GANs, that's great. You can use the GANs water. But if you're trying to do something long term, you need those particles of GANs with it to keep it charged.
Yeah, yeah. And Keshe has talked recently about this idea of using GANs, that we can only get so much of a strength of field using the water. With the water is limited in a way, even though we can create certain conditions, the vacuum environment and so on inside of water. It seems like the water environment is limited. So perhaps we could look at it as maybe there's other liquids that we could use in a liquid environment to create that vacuum condition in the liquid, which is easier than in our air environment. But not with water, because the oxygen interferes and the hydrogen, and so it's just not not conducive to that oxygen-free environment, that water-free environment. So I'm not sure where we're going with that, but maybe there's two ways to look at it. One is with the matter level stuff, like you were saying. The other is with creating the fields, that the fields act as the reflector rather than the matter level stuff. So I think ultimately we go with the fields. I mean, if you're out in space, you're not going to send a nano-coated plate 3 kilometers out in front of you as your protector plate. You'll send out a field out that far to probably a 3-layer field, where the 3 layers end up interacting and creating more or less like a wall or a shield. In fact, if you can get it high enough energy, it instantly disintegrates anything that tries to penetrate that shield, like dust particles or small flying animals and that kind of thing. So anyways, so you got a new reactor that you're going to put together there, Lee, with, or are you use one of your existing ones? Pardon me?
We've lost Lee's audio.
Oh, yes. We've lost. No audio. Can you hear us, Lee? Nod your head if you can hear us. Okay, you can hear us. We can't hear you. I think we're going to have to learn sign language here. That's all there is to it. Maybe you have a loose connection in your headphone arrangement there. That might be possible.
Battery may be low.
Yeah, that could be. Or it's plugged in, so you wouldn't think there's batteries, but nothing yet.
I had something funny like that yesterday also. The Windows 7 was sort of connecting and disconnecting my microphone continually.
Yeah, it's probably a feature,
1,
not a
2,
bug.
3.
Right?
I think I'm back.
Now we hear you, Lee. Yeah. Did you
But
get it figured out there?
Lee?
Yeah, I'm on Windows 7.
Yeah, yesterday my Windows 7 was playing up that way also. It was continually connecting and disconnecting my microphone.
Huh. Well, that's something new for me, so.
That's because there's so many people hacking into Windows 7 now that it's you have to get in line to listen to your microphone. Take a place and get in line. Take a number, get in line.
Okay.
Anyway, we're back. That's the main thing. So
you were asking me what I was going to do. I was just going to get 4 of my car reactors and sort of set them up on a table and test it out with a bismuth coil on top of the top reactor. So put them in the starship formation and put it on top and just connect them those 4 reactors to a battery, just like it would be in the car. Mm-hmm. That was going to be my test, which I was hoping I'm going to show you today. No Gans.
Actually, hook them up to a 12-volt car battery, you mean, like, or some sort of 12 battery system. Okay.
Just trying to simulate what's going on in the car. So, but anyway, that was going to be my first test. And then Dr. Keshe was talking about it would be better to have six base reactors in the car instead of 3. And then I was thinking, if you just separate those 2 sets of 3, you got your chestahedron again.
Oh,
so
right.
That ties back to that thing. So, which I haven't built yet. So.
Your pet project that hasn't been built yet. Yes. Well, maybe it's time. It seems like Mr. Keshe wants to inspire us in ways to start. Well, we lost your audio again, Lee. I'm starting to get good with the hand signals now. No, we don't hear you. So I guess it's a glitch in the Windows 7 probably. That's it must be one of the driver issues, usually a thing, or probably they want you to go to some site and pay money for a driver.
The administrator of the sound was playing up on mine yesterday. I don't know if you got yours at hand. Administrator sound the board.
You can't just connect through. Oh,
there you go.
I think I'm back again.
Yeah, we hear you now. So this is a bit stop and go, you might say.
Yeah, you better go on to somebody else.
Well, did you have any critical information you wanted to blurt out really quick? The secret number is 72137.42.
Well, I think I passed on my secret, but the only thing is, I can't prove it.
Right. Well, that's the next part. I think it's time for us to start proving some of the technology and jump-starting some of our older experiments with some new creative juice in them, you might say.
Okay.
That's what we need. Gans of creative juice. That would work. Well, okay. Thank you, Lee. And we look forward to some new creations coming out from your corner next week's. Anybody else have anything they'd like to bring up or question or comment at this point? Oh, it's a quiet bunch tonight. Well, okay, let's move along then. I've got one little thing that I had ready last week, but I didn't show it because I couldn't find it, but here it is, and I'll try to present it in some way. It's not major, but just something I was playing with, which is, we were talking about, there's a presentation about, geez, what was it called again? It had to do with the Gans water, and it gets absorbed in the absorbent paper and presents a certain structure that we were looking at. And that was the last couple of weeks, basically. So I, just for an experiment, I put some drops of water on a sheet of paper. And this is like the different Gans waters. There was the CH3 iron Gans water, which
small way, Rick.
I haven't spotlighted. Oh, thank you, John. Yes, it's
there. We are.
Does that have to? Okay, there we go. So, but I'll make this more expanded. I'll just show you roughly what it looks like on the paper here right now. We'll have a closer look at it in a minute. Basically, I just put drops of CH3 and CuO and the CO2 Gans waters on the paper to see what would happen. And this long one here, I just drew it out like in a drop that I pulled out along the paper. And then I just let them dry in a horizontal situation. So I don't think this will, it'll end up not focusing quite well. It's not too bad there. I'll put some light behind it, which can also help. And
I can see it very well from this end.
Let me just try the focus here. Get this lined up. You see, can I? Sure. Oh no, it goes that way. Okay. So yeah, I can only get into about there without it getting blurry. So you can see some of the shapes here. And I thought it was quite interesting. I was getting this sort of vortex kind of shape here with the, you see that one with the light sort of looks like poles in the middle of a circle, or, you know, a vortex, or some sort of
clear line in the middle, yeah.
Yeah, and you can see that in the other ones as well, in that one, for example. And a little bit in that blue one there. And in that one, you see it. And in this long one, you see the same effect. It looks like a segmented worm almost, but it's a strange phenomenon. So I was trying to isolate where that came from and how that happened. And it actually has to do, something to do with the way the paper shrinks when you put water on it. You can sort of see with the light at the right angle here, all the humps in the paper. It's like a mountain range. Every time you put a drop on it, it basically shrinks the paper and makes a little hump in the middle. And then the substances sort of go to each side. And that's what creates that. It's not anything too magical or special. But what it does do...
Rick, when you have a round drop, there's no effect of stretching one way or the other. It must have to do with the way the paper is made.
Exactly, John. That's right. It's got to do with the grain structure of the paper, which is obviously sort of going this way with, we can't see it with our eye because it looks all consistent, but it's actually got a certain structure to it. I mean, when they align the fibers in the paper plant, it just comes out a certain way when it's all pressed out and so on. And it's got a structure to it. And we look at, I'd have to, there you can sort of see it there with all the little humps and so on. And the one with the worm-like one is actually got a lot of little ridges and humps all along the way. It's quite interesting. So in this case, I'm not sure if that's the case with the other filter paper as well. I was thinking about that, and perhaps it is. Perhaps what we saw is we're sort of like fingernails, which is almost like some of these pictures in a way. You start to look like different things. That one looks like a worm, if ever was one. But it could be the paper, some artifacts in the paper itself, for example. I'm trying to isolate what that is. But the interesting thing is, even though the paper crimples and separates, I'm getting an echo through your microphone there, John. Maybe you can mute when you're not actually talking. When the drop went on, it did warp the paper and make that little hump, but it also separated. It created a separation of the liquid and made it more concentrated in one area, so that it's actually easier to observe. It gave more of a gradient in that space. So I thought it might be fun. I haven't looked at this under the microscope yet, so I thought it might be fun. I've got another microscope sort of camera thing hooked up here, and I'm going to try to switch that over and see if we can
Got a
have a
message
look.
by Gray Sweater. Says live stream is only audio.
Live stream is only on. Oh, it's not showing up for some reason. What the heck? Thank you, John. There's an issue with the live stream. It's not showing my picture for some reason. Okay, let me try to reshare this, and okay, I see. Somehow the preferences got messed up in the live streams. What's happened? Okay, thank you, John. I have to get things reset here, so the live stream's there. That should show up now. Sorry, there's a weird glitch there with the preferences. They don't normally reset to the camera, but it did somehow, and the camera reset to was black, so it showed up as black. Funny, there's problems with audio and video here. Okay, well, I guess the people in live stream didn't get to see any of this stuff, which was the picture I was showing of the drops I was talking about of the Gans waters. The brown one being the CH3, the blue one being the copper oxide, and there's clear ones too, but the CO2 didn't really come through as showing up. It just showed up as a wrinkle. So, so what we'll do is we'll have a look at this under my other camera here, a microscope camera, which I hope will work. And I just wanted to have a look at what that looks like under a camera. So let me try that here. Okay, get focused. All right, well, that's interesting. It's so what I'll do is oh, wait a minute. It's gonna be hard to keep it totally focused. Somewhere around there. And as I pan across, you can see This is the edge of that circle we were looking at. That's the dark edge of it. And if I go toward the center, it gets lighter and lighter at that center kind of core. And then it gets darker again at the outer edge.
It may be the field effect also on the drop. It pushes the GANs towards the edges.
Well, like I was saying, it's mostly because of the actual paper, the way it wrinkles, and the water, the actual liquid itself gets pushed off to the edge because of the hump of the paper in the middle from the warpage. But what it does is it gives us a really nice gradient from the edge where, see, the biggest, chunkiest particles kind of made it to the edge here. And in toward the center, you can see there's a gradient there from quite concentrated. Try to get it better focused. To
Has anybody looked into the GANs? Has anybody looked into the GANs if it works like the structured water? It makes smaller or bigger molecules.
Well, yeah, that's what Mr. Keshe has talked about several times in the workshops. That's basically what happens when you put the GANs into the water. Is it structures the water, breaks up those large, chunky water clusters. It's water, and it turns out water exists in clusters. It's supposed to break them up, sort of like a sieve. And you end up with essentially a structured and a purified water, because it also takes out the particulates and heavy metals and that kind of thing can tend to do that. They'll fall down to the bottom as well.
That's also if we think of the water instead of being molecules in a solids in a matter state, think of it as small vortexes of energy. That could give us a different idea of what happens in the structured water.
Possibly. The idea that I have run across with structured water, or easy water is another name for a certain kind of structured water, at least. This is the copper oxide, obviously, I guess, the copper oxide particles. You can see the edge there, and we can move toward the center. Not so much of a gradient there, but still at the edge, it's definitely darker than at the middle. And there's a number of sort of darker particles, but the actual blue color, we'd have to magnify it much more to get down into the nano level, because the blue that we see is essentially clusters of particles that are getting together in clumps or clusters. Be nice to be able to see it at the nano level. To actually look at the structure. Look at a couple more of these. This is one that's, oh yeah, this is the multi-GANs. So this has got basically a mixture of three or four GANs. You can see the blue and the brown in there. And try the lighting differently here.
What's the magnification on that, Rick?
What is it on this? 300 times. And that's a bit rough because it actually varies according to how far you have it off the object you're trying to look at and so on. But basically 300 times. This is the one that looks like kind of a worm because I stretched it out. I'll just go along it. You can see the change. There's a lighter section there.
Was that like pure Gans, or was that like 80% Gans like we'd put in our coils, or 20% Gans and 80% water?
Yeah, it was probably about 80%, like you're saying, something like that. It was it wasn't, like it still had a fair amount of liquid in it, but it was trying to get mostly the Gans, not just Gans water. But I wanted both so that the water would spread out beyond the edges, which it did, but it didn't take the Gans with it quite the way I expected. I thought instead of a defined edge, it would be more a gradient at the edge to kind of finely. I thought it would sort of dissipate into a fine gradient on the edge, but instead it became the highest concentration almost along that edge. It's like the Coulomb barrier. It's almost like one being of this entity. If I didn't know that I put this on here, then it actually, actually looks like a worm. I think I can.
What I find interesting is in the light areas in the center, there's so much Gans particles there. It's when we dip our coils, sometimes you hardly see it, but looking at that, what you've got here, you can see the whole area is covered in particles.
Yep. Okay, and let's see, there's this area here. I think this was a mixture, and you can see it's interesting in this one. This is around the center of the little ball here. And as we go out toward the edge, you can see on the outer edge, there's the CH3 Gans. And, but it's only on the outer edge, not in the center part and not in the rim sort of in between there. It's only it's more or less a defined sort of area.
Might be a way to test the purity of your Gans. I wonder what it would be like if you put a dot of like CO2, which has the mixture of zinc and CO2 Gans, whether you see any separation or something.
Yeah, right. So the thing is with the clear Ganses or white Ganses, it's very hard to see on the background. That's why with that maybe, but with that other test that we looked at last week or the week before, using the filter paper, it's trying to get this focused. So I'm going to say about that the reason that we see it on that test that we looked at last week and the week before is because of the additional substances that are added, which is was it ferric sulfate, I think? No, ferric nitride, ferric iron nitride. Here, there's two substances, anyways, that was added to the mix, and it ends up staining in a certain way. the water, so that whatever's in the water, you can see the spread that way. Because as we see with this, the spread is a bit hard to see. We stained it through our GANs in a way, but it's not, we're not seeing the water, we're just seeing the leftovers of the GANs, where if the water was stained with that special, whatever it was, ferricum.
Sorry, Rick, it's nitrite of silver and sulfate of iron.
Okay, right. So iron sulfate and
nitrate.
Silver nitrate, I think it is.
Yes.
Right? And the silver nitrate is similar to what they use in the same stuff, in fact, as what they use in photography for developing film.
You're getting.
Yeah. The silver is gray and the iron is sort of orangey brown.
Yes, that's right. So we've done a similar thing with the iron GANs in a way. We've stained it, and you can see the little stained particles here, spots.
You're getting a lot of clear crystals or white crystals showing up there too, which.
That might be the CO2, or more likely some zinc GANs probably. Zinc is really known for being white.
Yeah, you'll have to try some CO2 GANs on the paper and just see what those crystals look like.
Yeah, well, I'm just trying to find where it was here. Let me see. It's a bit hard to see here. I'll show you something interesting though. I'll go back to my other camera.
Could I go to a question? Has anybody tried doing CO2 GANs, but with water that has no oxygen in it? By water, not diluted oxygen into it.
Yeah, that's a good idea. That's a different topic. Yeah. So, what I was going to say about this is that it's really hard to see. I'm not sure. Maybe I can use this light in behind. Might work. What it is this. There's actually. I'll give one example. I'll make an outline here, and it's really hard to see. It's almost like secret paper that you can only see under ultraviolet or something. There's actually a line. There's actually a line around this, approximately where that black line is, where the water has diffused out. And what there is there's an actual ridge line that I can see in the paper. I'm going to try to make it visible. I don't know. Yeah, you can almost see it there. Okay. So I just have to set this up right. And maybe if I turn the other light off, it might be better. Try to highlight it. See that white line? Okay, in between the black line and the brown worm-like thing, almost halfway in between.
Yeah, I see it.
You see a white sort of outline. I don't know if I can highlight it in a different way. I'm just trying different.
Yeah, when you're moving the light, you can see it.
It's sort of jagged or zigzags, but it goes around the front and all the way around the back. It's the same with all of these. It's hard to see on that one. Try another one. There, see that little zigzag thing there? That white line that where the light is there? That's part of the outline of this one. There, you can see it next to my finger here. There we go. You see that little worm-like white line that goes around the back here, right in front of my finger. Just a couple of millimeters in front of my finger, you'll see that little wiggly white line. Well, that goes all around this structure because of the water that's absorbed out. So, but it's absorbed out and formed a white, like I say, a white ridge. So let's have a look at that white ridge under the microscope and see if that shows up. That would be interesting. Okay, let me find it again. Okay, there it is. All right. So it should be right about here. And have to zero in. So you can see some white sort of particles there, but I'm not sure if that's... I think that's it there. Seems to be I think that's the line. That's sort of, there's a darker area, but the right in front of it is kind of a light area.
It's sort of the limit between the humidity when it hits the paper and it doesn't.
Yeah. And now if we had those two stains in the sample, it might actually show up as something more significant there. It's really hard to discern from this anything, any information really. Again, it also might be helpful to be able to magnify it to the extreme. We might see some crystal structures at that point. So it definitely looks different on the paper. Yeah, I can see it's actually a dark line on the paper, not like a white line. There's a white and a dark sort of component to it.
It could be where the bleach that remains in the paper, where it displaces and sort of creates that effect of
It could be something in the paper itself, yeah, that the water just carries it along, kind of. Some acid or bleach or something, like you're saying. You can definitely see the line there.
You could try and get to some sugarcane paper, which hasn't any bleach. You should try and get hold of some of that paper and try it out.
Yeah, I just use regular printer paper for this experiment, but different ones could be tried.
Because here you can get our printer paper, but it's made out of sugar cane fiber, and they have no bleach.
I'm going to do an experiment with a drop of coffee. My syringe of coffee here. And I'll just put it on here and let it sit and dry for a little while. Okay, there's a single drop on there. And I'll just let that sit here. Actually, we can kind of watch it live in real time, perhaps. See how that works. Not sure why it's all. I guess that's just the way the water molecules are on there, little droplets or something. It's odd. Odd the way the droplets have shown up. Oh, I know what's happening. The water droplets, see there's, what is it, 8, no, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 or 9, I think it's 9 LEDs in this, that light up this little microscope. And you see the 9 lights are reflected in each of these little droplets. Wow. It's like a universe of reflected light from the LEDs. Each of those has, well, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 lights. That's kind of cool. An unexpected byproduct of this experiment. However, there's, again, we have an edge phenomenon going on. You can see that the water is stretched out. That's the dark area. And then the actual coffee substance, such as it is still held back. It's not penetrating as far in absorption. So essentially, it's taking all the water out of the substance, and the water goes to the outer edge. There's the water edge there with the bluish or grayish compared to the white. And you can see the other edge of the actual brown substance known as coffee is actually held back on a different layer as it slowly gets absorbed into the paper and evaporates and so on. Same basic thing as the GANs. I mean, look at it, the coffee's basically a nanoparticle type product. All right. Any more about that we can extract? Anything else you want me to look at, try, or test? Comments?
The group is slowly growing. Some people apparently have missed the hour change in Europe.
Likely, and there's also another group meeting happening, I think, with the Universal Council and a bunch of other people, so we probably have some conflict going on. Okay, what else do we have for show and tell here? Maybe another topic we'd like to investigate.
Hi, Rick.
Hello.
It's Thomas here from Winterpeg. We still have lots of snow in a few days of spring now, so. Anyways, I was just wondering, Armin showed some of the older, I don't know if they're older designs, but I guess some of the designs he just gave freely on his Facebook group. And one thing that intrigued me was he had a semi-spherical dome shape copper dome covering the entire star formation. So I'm wondering, because I'm fairly new to the group, has anyone been experimenting with shielding the reactor setups?
Yeah, we were just talking about this before the broadcast, actually. And this is what Mr. Keshe talked about in the last workshop, that specific topic, the idea of having a shield, or he called it a reflector, over the apparatus, and whether that was a matter level substance, you know, like a copper sheet, nano-coated copper sheet, like you're mentioning, or it could be an actual field, like a reflector field. We were talking about that a bit.
Yeah, I thought he was talking about the top reactor being stronger, so it actually bends the fields back down. But I guess there's a few ways you could accomplish that.
Right. So, you know, depending on the configuration, the exact configuration and strengths and all that kind of thing, are we talking about single core reactors, double core, triple core? So different types of fields might be created, and that's the idea. Is that that fourth reactor at the top is essentially a controlling reactor, in that it can control if it reflects the fields back in and starts to build up and create this this self-energizing kind of field effect. Then perhaps it can also have the ability to manipulate that field so it can be projected out in a couple of kilometers in front of the starship, for example, or the even an Earth-based spaceship, for as a protective field, as a buffer, as a no-go zone. Because if you're traveling at Mach 40 or greater, approaching speeds of light, speed of light, or even greater than speed of light, then it makes sense that you would need, if you're still traveling in a matter level spaceship, then you're going to need some protection, or even a dust particle would penetrate right through a solid steel, you know, hull or whatever. It's just no protection at those kinds of speeds. So to have a field, an actual protective field that would run in front of the craft, the actual skin of the craft, so it'd be projected outward in order to basically neutralize any particles that might want to come in, or strong fields, and maybe more of a repelling rather than, or reflecting, because that's what Mr. Keshe mentioned, a reflecting shield.
I believe he, I believe he was describing the ability of some UFOs doing that exact same thing, and it's very common in Mexico to see ships going straight into volcanoes. There's lots of videos on YouTube showing that, and he explained that the field generated creates that cigar shape. So he said that that's the type of field you would need to go through dense, heavy magnetic fields, such as magma, for example. So he also said that the human body can do this, and it's all to do with the strength of your amino acid. And he had a really interesting example. He said you could literally put your hand through someone's stomach, and he said that that was something that was known of, and that was the first time I've heard of that being done. But it's common for.
There are stories of psychic healing, I think it's called, or psychic surgery, actually, where
Yeah, and
where there's three doctors that are involved, and the one guy actually reaches in and manipulates organs and so on, and but not physically, but through his etheric body or his soul body, you could say.
well, I think Keshe was physically, well, he was on that, he was speaking physically, and I've been infatuated with the ET phenomenon for the last 10 years of my life, and I've had so many experiences with them and some close people around me, and it's very common for abduction stories to have these beings literally walk through walls or fly through the window. So they're able to do this, and Mr. Keshe is kind of correlating that this is actually a truth, that they're able to just raise their strength of their amino acid, and they could go through this not so strong physical matter state.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's the strength of the amino acid or the strength of the.
He said that. I don't remember the exact workshop, but it may have been a few back, so I could try to look that up for you guys.
Yeah, it's an interesting concept of whether it's the strength of the fields or the strength of the actual amino acid that's important there.
We've had this effect in the Philadelphia experiment also, the way the people stayed stuck in the steel.
Yeah, so the story goes, at least. And also, we were talking about cigar-shaped and creating these fields around the craft and so on. And I believe it's the Nimitz incident, it's called, if you can look it up, I think it's in Wikipedia. And it's, well, maybe we can have a brief look at it if it is. Might be interesting to, let me see if I can bring that up. Yeah. Okay, let me share that. Okay, so in Wikipedia, it's the USS Nimitz UFO incident. So in 2004, there was a radar and visual encounter of an unidentified flying object by US fighter pilots of the Nimitz Carrier Strike Group. In December of 2017, infrared footage of the encounter was released to the public. This is part of the what we see from that group that's releasing some of the UFO, supposed UFO footage that we've seen recently. So there was an interview of one of the pilots, and they talk about this encounter. So the missile carrier, as part of the strike group, had been tracking mysterious aircraft intermittently for 2 weeks on their advanced radar system. And so this event happens where the objects suddenly appear at 80,000 feet, and then they hurl toward the sea and then stop at 20,000 feet and hover, and then they either drop out of radar range or they shoot straight back up and so on. So one of these events happened on November 14th, 2004, mentions here, and aboard the Princeton. So they contacted two U.S. Navy jet fighters from the USS Nimitz to take off and check it out. And it talks about them, who they were, and so on. And so they had the AWAC, which is the Carrier Airborne Early Warning Squadron. In other words, one of these fancy airplanes to assist them with their special radar system. And they locked on to this target. They had excellent visibility in the calm sea, but when the fighters arrived on the site where the radar reading was, the crew of 4 saw nothing in the air nor on their radar. When looking down at the sea, however, they noticed a turbulent oval area of churning water with foam and frothy waves, the approximate size of a Boeing 737, with a smoother area of lighter color at the center, like if the waves were breaking over something just under the surface. A few seconds later, they noticed a very unusual object hovering with erratic movements 50 feet above the boiling water. And both the pilots described a solid object as a large, bright white tic-tac, 30 to 46 feet long, 10 to 14 meters long, with no windshield nor porthole, no wing, and no visible engine or exhaust plume. And supposedly this UFO, they tried to approach it, but it intentionally avoided any short-range radar lock, and they made more aggressive maneuvers and tried to get close to it, but it accelerated away under tremendous acceleration and leaving the pilots, quote, pretty weirded out. A few minutes later, they found the radar spot was now 60 miles away. Had to fly faster than Mach 3 in order to cover that distance, they calculated. So the pilots had to return back to the ship. They were low on fuel. And one of the commanders said, I have no idea what I saw. It had no plumes, wings, or rotors, and outran our F-18s. But I want to fly one, the guy says. The pilot says that, but I want to fly one. So that's kind of interesting. And then after a second team took off a little later, and that's the one that got the infrared camera footage of this evasive UFO. I'd like to play that, but it's under YouTube copyright, so I can't play that particular image. There might be some available that's not under copyright. We could look into that, but you can look it up. It's all available, and it's been shown to the public recently. This unveiling, supposedly, of the UFO pictures from the military has been approved and declassified and so on in order to be shown. So that's basically it. The Nimitz incident. I was off the coast of San Diego, about 100 miles off the coast of San Diego.
So I'd like to share my little UFO experience, which was last year, and I've seen maybe 8 or 9 craft since maybe 9 years ago or 8 years ago. That was my first sighting. This one was kind of special, but it's funny that Mr. Keshe said that the spherical UFOs are kind of outdated technology. He said that they're millions of years old. So that's what I saw, and I thought it was just unbelievable. It was just a pure silver ball in the sky, and I was freaking out because I was about half an hour away from the U.S. border. I was heading out there to go work with a fellow Keshe student, and I had a trunk load of nano-materials and GANs and all sorts of stuff that I was just trying to come up with an excuse of how to explain it to the border patrols, because they usually like to ask a lot of questions. So they showed up, and at first I didn't even register it. It was just, I saw it, and then I looked back on the road. Then I realized, wait a minute, that was Silver Sphere, and that was not a plane. And then I look back, and it's gone. So usually happens that they kind of disappear just in an instant. So, and actually that border crossing, they did search my whole car, and they did not ask one question. So they usually are watching and guiding us. So I was, it took my stress away when they showed up and said hello.
Well, if it's by the border crossing, you never know. They have a lot of drones and balloons and other things to watch the border crossing full time. They're 24/7. So might have been one of those, but
it was literally, it was daylight. It was in a really open section of field. So, and it was staying, I guess it was static. It wasn't, you know, in motion. So when I look back, it was like only a second, and you know, it was gone. And I've had, I don't know how many experiences like that where watching them, they're usually an orange light, an orange orb, and they'll maybe dance for a few seconds, and they'll sometimes they'll just light up, they'll go really bright, and then they're gone. It's not even a streak of flash or anything. They just sort of phase out. So that I've seen that probably maybe 3 times, but it's quite common for in the States to have sightings. That's like the hottest phenomenon. But what I'm wondering is how much of those are, like you said, involved with you know, the advanced military, and I'm sure a lot are, but there's still those EETs coming from the universal community, as Keshe's teaching.
A lot of people are playing with drones now too, and they can do amazing things where they can separate from a group of drones and look like a single object, and then split apart and all fly around and then come back together and so on. We saw that at the Olympics, the Winter Olympics that just happened in South Korea. And their initial, if you look at their presentation, if you look up drone, South Korea drone presentation for Olympics or something like that, you see a fantastic, amazing thing that they're able to do. I think they had close to 2,000 drones in the air at the same time, all coordinated and all able to create figures in the air, different, they had a snowboarder, you know, a guy on a snowboard in 3D in the air, this huge structure made out of 2,000 drones that could change their LED lights at will. So you could have an actual color 3D structure in the air with all these drones. And they have ways of controlling them now so that they're perfectly coordinated with each other and not crashing into each other and all that kind of thing. So interesting. That's just, you know, that's just technology that's available to the common public now. You can imagine what military type technology they have. In fact, they bragged about one that's in the physics news a couple of days ago. They now are working with creating a plasma. You talked about orbs and so on. The military is now able to create a plasma orb with a laser that talks. It's basically a talking speaker. You know, you could have music, you could have sound, you could have voice from looks like a blazing fireball, basically. And so they can create these fireballs, have them hover wherever they like now, and talk out of them as well. And I thought, well, of course, that's how they did the burning bush thing, and these, you know, entities that, these fireball entities that can talk and this kind of thing. It's they now have the technology for that. It's quite an amazing idea.
The real, I guess, aspect that makes some of these experiences more plausible than not is hearing kind of like the background, like the build up to it, and you know, just the synchronicities of it. So, you know, all my sightings have been sort of that really just fascinating circumstances. And the one crossing the border was really, I was just so freaked out. I've had so many bad experiences crossing the border. Just I don't know, for some reason they think some young Canadian crossing the border is up to something no good. But my first experience was south of Winnipeg, and it's close to the United States border. And I was talking to them for 2 weeks because I was convinced that they were out there, and I was praying, you know, just please show me, you know, please show yourself, please show yourself. For 2 weeks, I would not, for, you know, more than 10 minutes, not have that thought for 2 weeks straight. And they did show up, and it was pretty amazing. It was another orange light, and it was flying in sort of like a figure 8 pattern, up, down, back and forth, and then all of a sudden it disappeared. I thought I was kind of hallucinating, so I ran down to the campground's beach, and another person saw it with their kids, and I thought, okay, they saw it too, so that's got some gravity as well. But you know, this happens all the time. I go back to the city after that, and I go and tell my mom about this, and she saw the exact same thing, but she was 3 hours north. And the same weekend, her first experience. And when we came up to each other, we literally were going to tell each other our same experience. So it was actually photographed in the local paper where their cabin is, and it was hovering above. It was an orange light hovering above the lake, and it's quite a large lake. It's Lake Manitoba, and we've got a lot of activity hanging around there, but. Yeah, they're usually corresponding to your thoughts, your emotions, and so I guess there's a difference from just seeing a light in the sky to having, you know, what I just explained, like, you know, a really intimate sort of relationship with them on so many levels, you know, including my dear mom who's been engaging with them for quite some time too now.
Yeah, there's no doubt that it can be a very powerful experience if you are already feeling it, and then you see a phenomenon like that and connect with it, especially. Like says, can someone explain those crop circles? Well, I could attempt to explain my theory of crop circles.
Well, many of the crop circles are being filmed with small light spheres sort of drawing them.
Small light spheres sounds like a bit like the laser spheres that we were just talking about, actually.
Yeah, that's why I mentioned.
Spheres.
And Thomas also mentioned the orange images. What I mentioned before we started the group, the orange effect or the orange is surrounding the ISS yesterday or the day before. they detected this sort of cloud around the ISS, which was all orange colored, the same as the orange coloring that appeared on the snow in Europe.
Orange color in the snow.
I'll add a little bit of what I've gathered from the crop circle phenomenon, and probably one of the most, maybe it's not the most well known, but one of the largest crop circles had to do with a message being sent to space by, I think it was SETI with Carl Sagan back in the early 70s. And I think it was like 30 somewhat years later at that same facility where they sent the signal, it had information about basically our civilization, you know, our structure, what our DNA is made of, our numerical system, our position in the solar system. And they came back, you know, 30 years later and wrote it on a crop circle reply, and it showed their DNA structure, and it had additional strands. They were, I think, silica based versus carbon. They had, I think, 3 suns in their solar system, and it was your stereotypical. They actually, you know, had a little like binary pixel of their, I guess, their form, and they had this huge head. And maybe I'll share a link to that in the chat. But they've measured, you know, the radiation or just the magnetic field of the crop circles, and that's kind of like the signature that it's a real, I guess, a phenomenon. And the DNA is changed, and the wheat or whatever it's that they drew it in, the stems are bent, but they're not broken. They've just kind of like morph the field, I guess. So it's not just someone stomping around in a field with a board and a rope. So
no, it's more sophisticated than that. It's basically, the way I understand it, was like you got the ones with the board and that appeared in the early days in the 60s and 70s and so on, and way before that there's crop circles from many years ago, ever since humans found out they could do such things, probably. But most of them have turned up since the late 1980s and into the 1990s and 2000s. And so the more sophisticated, they're getting more and more sophisticated as they go along. The first ones are quite simple. Now they're entirely complex with these you know, secret geometry symbols and all that kind of stuff. So my idea, my theory on all of this is it's completely man-made, done by satellite with special rays, special, basically a special gun that they can use. You got to remember that in the 1980s, that was the time when Star Wars was kicking in. And the U.S. was actually, the U.S. Put out contracts. They wanted companies to work on different kinds of rays, different kinds of things that could shoot down you know, an incoming rocket, part of the Star Wars program and the Star Wars defense system of Ronald Reagan and so on. So they had all these companies, and not a lot of them, but some of these military type supply companies were working with different kinds of rays, and they could actually, they were working with like a tube that directs the fields. There's a name for it, escapes me right now, but basically it's sort of like a microwave tube. A microwave has a tube that directs the rays in a certain way. It's a resonating chamber, basically. And these resonating chambers can be developed in certain ways to create a geometric pattern with these rays. And I had a thing on my bulletin board for many years here, actually, from probably 10 years ago or so, where I researched this and found out that these companies, or at least this one company that I read their tests and looked at their tests, and they had these incredibly complex geometric shapes they could create from these tubes, from just the modification of the tubes plus the magnetic fields they could use when they shot these rays out, and it would create a geometric pattern. And I thought, well, there's the crop circles right there. You just blast out with this ray. You know, feed your design into a computer. It makes the waveform exactly correct, and bingo, you shoot out this wave, and it creates your crop circle from satellite in space, basically.
But what's
my theory.
What's the motive? Because honestly, it's one of the biggest phenomenons out there that's not acknowledged, and you know the government's covering up every chance they can. So, you know, it's
what are they covering up?
The whole phenomenon. They do not acknowledge it whatsoever. There's a policy. It's called,
of course.
it's called a truth embargo.
And then if you get into the second layer to find out the truth behind it, it's like, oh, the aliens are creating it, or there's another truth that it's this, another truth that's that. The government's happy because not one single person I know that has mentioned the theory that I just brought up that's completely man-based, and it's done by satellite with rays that have been developed in the 1980s.
Yeah, but what's the motive? So they're just doing it to throw us off?
For the people that do that, this is the greatest form of humor you could possibly imagine. If you're in that position of power, that you're getting paid to work with this technology, and you get to play with people's heads at the same time, and you get to create these what do you call it, fake news all about it, and it totally diverts all the attention away from the waste of money into these projects and so on, into all the black projects, which is what these were part of. Trillions of dollars go into this. No one's brought that up at all in respect to crop circles. Not one person I've never seen mentioned in the last 10, 20 years, anyone mentioning the trillions of dollars that's gotten wasted to make those crop circles. No one's even thought about it because they've pulled the scam off that, oh, we're not going to talk about the crop circles, and it's not something that we relate to. And then all these theories come up, all the fake news left, right, and center, that probably the Russians are right in there just promoting it like crazy. They may even be creating them because it was part of the Star Wars program. The Russians were working on that technology. The US was working on it. England and others that were involved in all that. That was part of the high technology that was going on at that time. Now, part of what we have out of that is the laser technology that they've come up with, and now they've just shown to the public through this laser plasma ball thing, and plus they've outfitted the destroyers now with lasers this year for the first time, high energy lasers that are able to shoot down a craft in the air virtually instantly, so they don't have that delay time of shooting a rocket off to shoot something down, and you could miss with that rocket technology, but with laser, it's the speed of light, and it's very fast and instant. And if you have a UFO or something else you're combating, then it's an instant ray that goes out, rather than a rocket, which is delayed, and anything that's really fast could beat a rocket.
I would say that there's more proof to what John was saying, that there's these balls, and I guess England and parts of Europe, there's lots of people that see these lights, these orbs kind of floating above the fields, and it's almost instantaneous. They're there, they're gone, and out, and they come up with this beautiful design. But it'd be nice to know what the government knows, and what they're doing. So a lot of my focus has been about trying to petition the government to reveal what they do know. So you're seeing that with that story you just you have posted here, and I think we're going to be seeing a lot more of that, a lot of more disclosure and people coming forward. And I've had the amazing pleasure of meeting probably one of the most well respected, and he actually is the highest ranking politician to publicly acknowledge that there's this ET presence and they're not from this planet. And you may have heard of him, Rick.
Paul Hellyer.
Yeah, I got to shake his hand in Calgary 2 years ago, and
right on. Yeah,
he's mentioned
quite a hero, actually. What a tough guy, and
he is, and
quite a character.
He gave a free lecture to Winnipeg, and I don't know if he was in Vancouver. I think it was a year and a half ago, and he was talking about the money system. So he's like, you know, he's saying it on all levels. But what he publicly said was the Canadian government knows of at least, I think, 3 species that's been on this planet for at least 2,000 years. So I have a, at that last lecture, he actually did mention the ET phenomenon, and it was kind of cool. He has access to all sorts of information that, you know, regular folks like us aren't privy to. And what he said was, when Bill Clinton was president, I forget what year it was, but he actually sent 2 Secret Service agents to Area 51 to confirm whatever it was. So he's revealing more and more as time goes on. And I think there's another meeting in Vancouver this year with, I don't think he's speaking, but some other folks are speaking about the phenomenon. So
yeah, well, it's all tied into, like, he talks about the money system, like you mentioned, and so on. And that's, the money system is tied into the UFO phenomenon, which is tied in. It's also all tied into, you know, what we call security and national security and this kind of thing too. So it's a big ball of wax that's a tricky thing to just suddenly unveil everything to the public, because in a way it would be letting go the secrets that all the governments know, but the people don't really know. And if we bring all these secrets out, then it's kind of like revealing your cards if you were playing a card game, which is essentially what the countries of the world do, and they're playing card games with their weapons and their threats and this kind of thing. And nobody really wants outright war. Well, I when I say that, I actually take it back, because actually many people want that now. They want Armageddon. Armageddon is big on the list of things to do for humans on the planet. Virtually every religion has it built into the religion to look forward to Armageddon. It's coming soon to a planet near you. I mean, look at the Christian has a view of the Armageddon that's coming, and they'll be taken off the planet at that time, and where all the bad people will be destroyed and this kind of thing. Same thing with the Muslim religion, same thing with the actually several other religions have that built into the structure, unfortunately. Sorry,
What
go
if,
ahead.
what if enough of us Keshe people get together with the intent to remove that Armageddon thing from all those religions and change the time?
Well,
that's essential. Yeah, go ahead. Estella, that's to the voice that I heard there. Go ahead.
Hi guys. I'm driving, and I've been listening, and I just want to say that all this, they try to confuse and they try to give fear so we can manifest through fear. And that's why they manipulate the information. So now modify the hologram in this planet. That's how
Sorry, you broke
stains.
up on the last something about modify the hologram on this planet. Is that what you said?
Yeah, because I know about this, that we have the power to stabilize, to keep good, and that means keep your emotions and not to stay, be afraid of a planet Nibiru's coming or the earthquake in California and all that. It's all the fake news that try to create confusion and fear.
Actually, I think Mr. Keshe has said that that there is going to be a lot of Earth changes, and that planet Nibiru is actually our second sun. And Keshe has also confirmed that we are a binary star.
I understand, but we are getting assistance. So the electromagnetic field is not going to be so bad. Otherwise, we will be already gone. So, apparently, we already decide who is ascending, who is changing bodies and everything. But I just don't want to talk about this. Sorry, but we have to keep, when we talk, we need to be positive. I just want to say that.
Rick?
Yes, go ahead. Mark.
You sure that's, I joined the meeting late, sorry. Is that they used to call that the mowing devil? But I was the mowing devil years ago.
Devil.
Like mowing lawn. But I was going to...
At the crop circles, you mean?
Yeah. I was going to say the exact same thing Rick said before he said it, and that was that it was created by the satellites with a nice template, because those things are so perfectly shaped from every angle, the satellite ones, that I think anyway, that it's definitely not a man-made thing. Well, it is using a satellite, not a handmade thing.
But the crop circles appeared before the satellites.
Right. That
100 years.
Those are the man-made ones, yeah. With the sticks or brooms or whatever, different strings and ways they had to create.
Yeah,
the latest ones, like I was saying, are much more sophisticated, much more detailed, and much more geometric, and all significance in them, and so on.
I do believe they have the technology. I was 6 years old, and I had a UFO experience. I have a UFO above my head with my sister, and we were in our grandparents' car, and the memory vanished until I was 33. And one day it came to me, and I called my sister, and I asked her, "Do you remember this?" And she said, "Yes." "You want to talk about it?" And she said, "No." And that was it. And the only thing I remember was like a dish. It had a circle in the center with different lights. The lights changed. Later on, I saw the drawings what the Germans were designing, and it matched exactly that configuration. And I was in Argentina, and at that time I was 6 years old. The military was in the government, and the military was connected to the Germans. And my grandparents live 1 block from a military center, and that exactly UFO was above the military base. And so, and that was one of my 3 experiences I had, and we have to accept that the technology that we have in our daily life is a dinosaur compared with some special forces they're having as an access, and it's been like this for a long time.
Mm-hmm. That's right. You make money off the old technology. That pays for the new stuff. Unfortunately, though, it's extracted its price in the ordinary person, and now they have to work 2, 3, 4 jobs just to survive. So all of that excess affluence has been sucked out of our societies, and the burden's been put on the ordinary person. So that's the unfair part of it. And that's what's about to change, is that the ordinary person will have a chance in the future that's being built currently.
So Mr. Keshe, Mr. Keshe actually explained that those lights that you were seeing around the center, when he showed off in the last teaching, the starship formation, but then the that in between the top and the bottom reactors, there's that ring of just cores. And he said that that created the colorful lights. So, and he didn't say that that was military technology. He said that that was, you know, what we call UFOs, ET technology. So a lot of the military got their, I'd say most of it from ETs through reverse engineering.
Yeah, but you got to figure too, probably the military doesn't even have access to most of this technology. It's beyond as far as the national security goes, it's beyond nuclear, which is usually military goes up to nuclear, and that's as far as they go with military. But it's beyond, the security level is beyond the military, the nuclear level, the nuclear bomb level. So it's something that the ordinary people it's been kept away from. It's only certain corporations are working with that technology, and they keep it, you know, if the government works with it, then it's in a segmented way. There's compartmentalized, they call it, so different people don't know about the full picture, what's going on, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of stuff about all that, and there's a lot of connections, a lot of strings attached to the whole deal, different levels according to how you look at it, whether it's Earth-based UFO technology or space-based from other civilizations possibly. Which makes sense because the techniques, the principles are all the same. You're going to have the same, you know, ability to work with the fields, essentially, is what it amounts to. Anyway, I don't know if we want to carry on with this or go into something else here. Or
I do have a show and tell for you guys this week.
Oh, okay. I'm going to end this here. Do you have something you want to share, or I mean?
Yeah, I could share a video, and I think I tapped into the magnetic gravitational heartbeat. I don't know. I'm just, you know, experimenting with reactor technology on the dynamic dual core. So it's been a powerful experience, and it's only been 2 weeks. So I'm kind of excited to keep experimenting. So it's just a short video, and I will show. Sorry?
No music or copyright and stuff, just your own picture or whatever. Is that the idea?
Yeah, it's just a short video.
Okay, great. You
That's
should
all right.
be able to. Yeah. Do you know how to share the? You could bring up.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. Go ahead. Okay, yeah, we can see the, yep, definitely.
Okay, and just let me know if the music's or the
We'll keep it, make sure the sound's turned Pardon me, music? Did you say music or no?
There's some music in the background, but
No. Do not play the music. Do not play the music. Do not play any background sound. Make sure there's no sound. Don't even share the sound in your share screen. It's very important. Don't play any of that background music. That's why I asked if there's any background music in the video.
Okay.
Otherwise, we have to I have to edit the video.
Edit that out. Okay.
Spend many hours messing around with it.
Okay. So I'll turn the volume off then, and I kind of got lucky. This was my first just go at it, and I put the phone on, and I didn't really expect it, but I got it. Well, you'll see.
Okay.
Where'd you get the reactor?
I made that myself, my friend.
Looks good.
Thanks.
You'll have
to tell us about it.
Yes. Let's look at the video here first, see what happens.
So it's upside down. I don't know why I did that when I uploaded it, but anyways, yeah. So, but anyways,
the video upside down. Okay, right. I got it. Yeah. Right.
But there's some vibrations, of course, but is it freezing for you guys?
Yeah, I think it's only moving at a frame every couple of seconds or something.
Yeah, it's actually a high quality video, so maybe that's why my internet connection's not so good, but hopefully it'll pan out. In about 20 seconds, you'll see a shift. So it's loaded with a CH3 on the outside and a heavy gold composite on the inside. So there's a strong potential.
So it's a 2-core reactor, right? With the 2 motor?
Yeah, and they're spinning in opposite directions. So, yeah, right there. Oh, and it froze. Maybe I'll have to share the link with you guys.
Yeah, if you send it to me, I could play the video, and then...
you probably have a better internet connection, hey?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I just paused it there. Hopefully it was, yeah. Okay, I will,
still playing it.
You see that?
Not,
Yeah. Yeah, if you can get it in a fluid motion, you'll see it. It's like, yeah, it's got its own heartbeat. So I will stop sharing, and it's on a Google account, so you could just pull it up immediately.
Is it something you can share publicly, or do you want to send it to me privately?
Yeah, I'll just send it to you privately for now. Just a heads up again that there's that music, so.
Yeah. Yeah, for other people that have presentations, make sure there's no background music at all, unless you're playing guitar yourself and it's not a cover of someone else's music.
If we've purchased the rights to the music, is that okay then?
If you check it with me and you've got worldwide rights, and you can pass on those rights to anybody else in the world that they can also use it for any purpose that they wish, yes. I've never seen any agreement that agrees with that yet. Because
in other words, the answer is no.
Rights, yeah, because otherwise the rights will be either for North America but not Europe. It'll be for YouTube but not for Facebook, and not for other media and so on. So we've run into this several times recently. And then you have the corporations like Warner Music Group, which is buying up the rights to music. And then Warner Music Group is just being bought up by another huge conglomerate. And they're going to end up just pushing people and stealing as much money as possible. They're going to milk the whole system. And anybody with any violation anywhere is going to end up having to pay. And I can see that coming, and I do not want to be part of that. I know how Warner Music Group has worked on my YouTube channel to to put on their copyright violation on music that I already had rights to, and they took away the money and the income that I was getting from YouTube, and I lost several $100s from Warner Music Group illegally taking over my YouTube video because they thought they had the rights to it, and I had no way of arguing with them without going to.
I was talking about stuff from Audio Jungle that you buy the rights to.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'd have to read the agreement and find out if it's used.
Yeah, they got two different agreements. One where like I could put it anywhere I want on the internet, but I can't use it commercially. And so if it got replayed by you, that may fall in the commercial end of it or something. So
that's the thing. What is commercial? What is private? Who knows how someone else could use the video, or if it gets played in China, they could have different rules and regulations, and all of a sudden something that was okay on YouTube here is not okay on YouTube in China, and they have to remove it because of the audio and so on. So it's a tricky world. I'd like to have people play their own music as much as possible, and then that's fine because you have the rights to it and you can sign them over. Anyway, where are we here? Did you send me a link? Oh, there's the link. Sorry. Thank you, Thomas. I was busy. Let's see if I can. Looks like I can play it directly from. Oh, it's got your link in the.
Hey, Rick.
Need to download it. Yes.
Are you familiar with William Tompkins?
Somewhat. I can't remember exactly right now, but
I think he went to the Navy. He was inducted at age 14 or 15 because of certain talents he had, and then he was.
He built since a young age. He was building these artifacts, military artifacts. He was a natural engineer.
But anyway, he had a little, his admiral, Rick Abada, had a little pet project that he was involved in, and they used to debrief some Nazi spies. It's a very powerful story. He was about 93 years old, and he worked in this technology for when he was telling the story, you know, when he was younger and up to older. But it's quite a fantastic story you might want to review. I think he was on Rents a number of times. And yeah, apparently the Nazis were working with something or some off, or maybe on, I'm not sure, but he passed.
You gotta realize people don't know, but this technology goes back, this flying craft hovering type technology goes back a long ways into basically a century ago. Nikola Tesla, people aren't aware, but Nikola Tesla had a flying machine. And if you look into it, he had it all figured out using 5 of his inventions, and he had a device that could hover without using any wings or airbags or ailerons or any other visible support, no propeller. And it worked on field effects. Basically, he had a generator that generated these high voltage, high frequency waves, and could create a means with interacting of 5 of his inventions to do that. And he bragged about how he could have a device the size of a stove, and he could go out to the window of his apartment and visit his friend that was many miles away, and so on. He talked about that, but he sold his technology primarily to the Nazis, who were actually not bad guys at the time. They weren't considered to be bad guys at around the First World War time. They were supposedly all, they had that worked out after the First World War and so on. And so, you know, like for example, Ford Motor Company was working with the Nazis. They had a factory that was helping support the Nazis, and that was part of the way you did business back in the old days, because they weren't considered to be bad guys at that time, and so on. Anyway, so the technology's been out there, and we hear stories and various things about the Nazis, how they were working with this technology in the Second World War, and are on the verge of possibly perfecting it or possibly using it. And something happened, didn't work out, and suddenly there was supposedly the end of the war, and supposedly the Nazis lost, but they may not have, because they ended up creating, through Operation Paperclip, the CIA and other agencies were actually created from the leftovers of the Nazi regime. So we kind of know how that went.
So actually, that technology goes back thousands of years, and the oldest records of it is in religious texts such as the Bhagavad Gita, where the Vimana means measuring out, traversing. It's an aircraft they described in great detail, like very intricate detail, even how to build it. And it's the same stuff that we're working with. So, you know, they had this technology thousands of years ago. It was actually quite common back then. And we've sort of de-evolved, and all this stuff's been swept away, and it's our forgotten history.
Yeah, all we hear now is magic carpet. You know, what was a magic carpet? And then you hear like Mr. Keshe said, that it's been tried twice before in cultures on Earth, but it gets, man can't handle it, and it gets basically taken away is what happens. I heard one story that the reason the magic carpets were stopped was that like they had basically the manufacturers for the magic carpets that could fly had special materials in them and so on, and only certain carpet makers knew how to make the special magic carpet thing. And so only certain people would use the magic carpet, usually you know, the king or someone that was associated with royalty. And apparently one of the relatives kind of got drunk and flew over the king's palace and peed on the king's palace or on the king or something like this. And that infuriated the king, and he banned all flying carpets after that time, or all flying machines, essentially, is what they would be. And had all the builders of the magic carpets put to death, and basically stopped everything. And if anybody ever discussed or talked about these magic carpets again, they would be put to death, and so on. And any traces or any writings or any images, all would have been erased and totally taken out of the culture, because of, you know, to totally eliminate that from mankind is they weren't able to handle it. They're still too rough and mistreating each other and that kind of thing. So it's kind of a funny story, but maybe it wasn't too far from the truth in a way. You know, with what we know now of the power of nanomaterials and ganses and plasma and fields and so on, it's entirely possible that something that might be composed of what sort of looks like a carpet type material might end up having levitation qualities to it, the right design criteria. I
Mr. Keshe
prefer
was
to believe so.
Rick, Mr. Keshe, when he was giving a talk in Italy, he asked for Caroline to go and get a carpet from the boot of the car, and it was brought into the lecture room, and he was saying he kept referring to it, and he mentioned the old magic, and you know, I think he was dropping a hint that this has been done before. Those stories about flying carpets, it's all to do with producing substances that are put into the dyes, into the wool, and so on. And many were seen, actually, and recorded by people in various locations at the time, just like we see UFOs and report what we see. There were also political friends and powerful people that bred horses and built chariots, and they didn't want, like we see now, they didn't want the status quo to be disrupted.
Good point. Yeah, the chariot makers would be outraged. What do you mean, a flying chariot?
Yeah.
No, we can't allow that.
What am I going to do with my horses, you know?
What about the wheel manufacturers? They'll be out of work. The spoke manufacturers will be out of work. The bearing manufacturers will be out of work. That's you know, that's our whole that's how we make our money. We can't have that.
Right. So
that's the same philosophy today.
Yes, it's the status quo. You don't rock it because people are making money out of it.
When the car first came out, it was an issue because it was only buggies at that time, and the car would mean that you no longer have horses and all that. We consider it an expense now, but to them it was part of the whole culture. You know, what do you mean? What are all the horse keepers going to do? What about the people that pick up after the horses and take care of the horses and so on? They'll all be out of work. We can't have that. So this is the way we think in mankind, I guess. Okay, let's have a look at the video here. I'll leave the sound off and just play the video. And it's about 2.5 minutes. And if you want to comment, maybe as we go along here.
Sure
Thomas,
thing.
if there's
Yeah.
something that you want to point out. Can you see it? Is it smoothly playing there now?
Yeah, and I'm glad you flipped it up. That's good. Great.
Yeah, I didn't deliberately do that. That's just the way it played. So.
Oh, that's weird. It was upside down.
Yeah, it's much better.
So again,
now the sense.
Yeah. The outside's CH3, and I actually don't know. It's probably a composite CH3. It might have deuterium as well in it. So you can kind of see right there. It's kind of trying to find its balance, and I was just playing around with. Yeah, I was playing around with the inner. I was slowly increasing the speed, I believe, but this was kind of really lucky.
Any idea what the speed would be? Did you have any?
Yeah, I actually did measure it right after when you see it. I don't know what you'd call it, a dance, but I think Mr. Keshe mentioned it as a heartbeat. And I showed this to a friend of mine, and he actually used those same words. So I think that's right. So the outer is 40 millimeters, and the inner is 20. So it's a 2-to-1 ratio, and yeah, right there. It's just moving so solid that it's not a vibration, and I actually felt something right when that happened, and it's just moving in tiny little circles. So the outer was spinning at 35, and the inner was spinning very close to double that. It was spinning, I think it was 68. So yeah, I measure it right there. 3,500
and 6,800 you're talking about, not 1,000, correct? just to be clear.
Yeah. So it's approximate because it's just a laser tack, but yeah, that thing was it was just dancing. I just left it like that for a while, so it works, I think. So I'm just wondering, is anyone else kind of
I get that actually quite a bit. There's resonant harmonics that kick in, especially if you got two reactors going at the same time, especially if they're counter rotating the way you have it set up. It would be almost like if you had two radio frequencies that were opposed to each other, which in a way your two opposing RPMs are in a way canceling each other. So if you have two radio frequencies that are close to each other, then you get or two sound frequencies. If two people whistle and the frequency is really close, then you get a beat frequency, which is the difference between the two frequencies is what you get, the leftover. So if two people whistle close together, then you'll hear like a do-do-do-do-do, kind of a throbbing resonance that is repetitive that will kick in. And it's that way too with vibrations and so on. So you get certain points where some strange phenomenon can go on. I had one where I had a bottle, a water bottle, sitting on my table next to a reactor combination I was trying, and suddenly the water bottles just started sort of vibrating, and quite violently, or quite extremely, and then it started moving all over the table. This full bottle of like a half-liter bottle of just bottled water, and it was fascinating to see it find its resonant frequency, I guess, and it was like it had no weight all of a sudden. It just sort of slid all over the table, and if you were to push it with your finger, you would have a lot of resistance to try to push it sideways on a table normally. But yet this thing was able to just slide around as if it was on ice.
So that was my thinking as to why this thing actually isn't operating on those means, because it's in a fixed position. It's literally, it has the center point and it's spinning all around it. Like it's literally staying in that one spot, but it's circulating itself. So it's kind of found its position, and then it's like a heartbeat. It's just going up, down, up, down, up, down, left, right, left, right, left, right. And it's, it's got that heartbeat, like Keshe said. And so I don't know. I'm gonna play around with it more, but
I think whatever the cause, I think it is an important phenomenon, because if you think about it, like we're on this planet, and normally where you stand on the planet is we feel like things aren't moving around us, but at the same time we're moving at over 1,000 miles per hour on the equator of the planet, for example, and a lesser speed as we go toward the poles. But that's a significant speed. The planet is also moving around the sun. It has another velocity there. The sun has its velocity within the galaxy, and so on. So all these complex movements are already happening. But relative to our time-space right in front of us situation, when you start to rotate something and it creates its own center, then you've essentially created the soul for that object. The soul is just another word for center, and so you've created a center. And if you have two rotating objects, one inside the other one, you've created two rotating centers, you could say, and they're going to interact with each other, because rotating objects, they create their own fields, their own magnetic gravitational fields. Especially, you can think of it very easily as gravitational, because when you rotate something, say a gyroscope or something that you rotate at high speeds, and then you try to move that object from place to place, it feels heavier. It's got a inertia to it due to the rotation. You've changed the gravitational field of that object by creating you've changed the feel of it, the feel of the weight of it, just from a rotation. And the higher the speed of the rotation, the more effect it has. If you have a really fast rotation, you can create a really effective gyroscope that keeps things upright. For example, Yamaha has a new motorcycle that has a gyroscope built into it, so you don't have to put the kickstand down. You can actually get on the motorcycle. You can let go of the handlebars and it stays upright due to its rotation inside this gyroscope that keeps it upright.
So I think the video that I'm showing you, it is a magnetic gravitational phenomenon, because when I spin one core just by itself, there's little to no vibration. And same with the top one, there's little to no vibration. It's really well balanced. And so just having them both go off just immediately, there's that that jittering. They're just, you know, it's so much energy going off. So the GANs I made is quite special. I used a meteorite, and I shared this to the Facebook group, and I discovered something I think that's really powerful, because it honestly produces GANs instantly, because the metal came from space. And it's actually, Keshe mentioned this in the last workshop, because he was saying you're not going to go anywhere with your GANs in water. I think everyone was thrown off by that. They're wondering what the heck, what's this guy leading us to now? So he said if you can make GANs in a plasmatic condition, I think he said basically. So I believe that meteorite was created in a vacuum, and it's already dictated its position from those fields. So I could share a picture in a bit. I'll just pull up right now and get that ready. So what I did was I put a piece of meteorite inside just a glass of salt water, and I put a nano-coated copper outside the glass container. And I'm very sensitive to energy, and instantly this thing is giving off just tremendous fields, and within 10 minutes you could see it coming off of the meteorite. And I don't want to
see the GANs coming off, you mean?
Yeah, within 10 minutes. Without any physical connection. So that time is on a whole nother dimension, because it takes a long time to make zero boost GANs. So yeah, that was just something that was a gift to me, and I haven't seen anyone use it. So I recommend go getting a piece of meteorite. They're very common, they're very cheap. You could just buy one on eBay. And
many different kinds of meteorite, but
a lot of them are iron.
Yeah.
So
how did you choose? How did you choose which?
It was a gift. It was a gift, like I said, and I actually got a really special one when I was in Drumheller, Alberta, and that place is well known for its fossils and its dinosaurs. So I went to a rock shop just to check it out, and she had a meteorite. I believe it was originally from, I don't know if it was New Mexico, but anyways, the composition was mostly iron, but it had a very high germanium count, and those are actually kind of hard to find. I did try to track one down on the internet, and it's mostly iron with a little bit of nickel or a few other elements, but it's mostly iron and some silica. So that one produces amazing field strengths. Like, I do not want to sleep. I do not want to eat when I make that stuff. So I've tried it 3 separate times, and all 3 separate times it produces GANs instantaneously. So that's in the outside, and like the field strength is just out of this world. It really is. what I showed in that video is it's exactly what I was expecting from spinning that GANs. And so I'm ready to share just a quick photo here.
Okay. I was going to ask you, when you make the GANs with the meteorite, do you just hang the meteorite in the salt water? Is that basically it? Or?
I just drop it in the glass. So yeah, I've got
a nano-coated copper coil around the container. Is that the way it goes?
You could do any nano. I did a nano zinc, same thing, just outside the container. So I'm all queued up for that now.
Oh, okay. Let me stop the share.
Which kind of materials did you use to do the white core?
The white core was I did this all with a 3D printer, and it was PLA, which PLA is it's a natural amino acid. Basically, it comes from plant oils, and it's really just simple, basic. There's no complex chemistry going on to make it, and it's just a really nice, clean, natural structure to work with. It's just I think a few CH bonds, and so that's why I went with it, just because it was easy to go. So anyways, this picture is approximately 20 minutes, and it's a nano-coated copper plate on top, some ocean water I dragged out from Vancouver, and I don't know if you could see it, but there's some shading starting to happen. Can you see that ring?
Yes.
So that's 20 minutes in, or half an hour, somewhere around there. And there's a close-up actually of it. So it's kind of interesting.
Now this is an iron-based meteorite, is that right?
That's the iron with germanium, but most meteorites are iron, and it's actually kind of a nice piece to work with, because the iron content's usually really high. I think it's around 80, they're high 80s. And you can kind of see here, there's three shades. There's an outer light yellow shade, and then there's a darker orange, and then there's this dark ring of GANs. So I think there actually is tritium, deuterium, and possibly just protium or GANs. So
what about germanium? Would it not be germanium in there too?
Oh yeah, possibly in the mixture, but because it's mostly iron, I'm thinking that's what you're seeing, like the three main rings on it. But so that's pictures about I think that's a week, and it's caked, it's covered, it's everywhere, and there's a little bit
less black. We don't see so much black, and underneath it's gone more brown.
Well, I think the black's underneath, but then it's loaded with this orange fluffy stuff after a while.
Yeah. Now, is this still have the copper outside the glass? Or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And did you do a trial without any copper, just putting a meteorite in the salt water without anything around the glass, just to see if it would do the same thing? I wonder.
No, actually I haven't, but I should maybe just do that for argument's sake. But I know it works because I'm so sensitive to energy, and I've gotten 2 weeks without eating food and just drinking the plasma water. So whenever I feel a high field, I'm just sort of used to that, because I've been spinning GANs around my whole entire body for quite some time. I developed that plasma pod, and so I've tuned myself into the fields for quite some time, and I drink the plasma water like a drunken sailor. And so, but I'll do that for you guys this week, and I'll come back next week and let you know.
Okay, that'd be great if you could actually do that. That would be fantastic.
So, did you notice any physical changes, weight loss, or anything?
Oh, when I drank the water for 2 weeks, absolutely none. And I didn't sleep for 20 hours out of the day, and I honestly had a hard time just functioning because it was like, what do I do with myself for 20 hours? And I'm up till 5 o'clock in the morning. But I did not shrink because I fasted before for a week, and I would physically shrink, shrivel, and lose most of my fat. But that did not happen at all. I was actually maintaining a constant weight, and I was doing hot yoga for those 2 weeks, and nothing was losing off of me. So I knew that I was actually I had this one moment where I was tuning into a reactor, and I was on my 3rd day, I think. I had a little star formation. It was 3 reactors, and I felt just this huge wave, this huge shift. And Mr. Keshe has mentioned this, that you can increase the strength of your amino acid. So I think that's actually what happened to me, because ever since then, my physicality has changed. My relationship with food has changed. I eat very little now, and I'm actually looking forward to going back on the plasma water. That was sort of a trial for 2 weeks. That was back in October, and it was such a wonderful feeling. Honestly, I could not have been any more at peace. And
that's interesting that you didn't lose weight, because normally when one does fasting, I've done fasting for 10 days or a bit longer and so on, and normally one would lose at least between 5 and 10 pounds. Usually about a pound a day is what you would normally lose in that situation.
yes,
So
yeah.
that's quite amazing, especially
Because
when
yeah,
so on.
you can we get most of our energy from the field, so it's all about integrating, I guess, the whole body into that, and just working with this energy for the last 2 years. It's really changed me in so many different ways. And that experience back in October, I knew shifted something, my own internal structure within me. So it would be nice to see this recorded on DNA, but I think it was back just a couple of weeks ago. There was an article released about the astronaut. I think his name's Mark Kelly. He went into space for a year, and his DNA changed, and he actually has a twin brother with his identical DNA. So it was actually just a perfect test, because it's the only astronaut twin out there. So yeah, he came back with his DNA change. So
well, this is actually the big news, is that a lot of the DNA that they thought was only hereditary, and that we had all these hereditary diseases and hereditary this and that, turns out that much of it can actually be controlled and changed within a person's lifetime, or even shorter periods of time. So some of the diseases that we attributed to DNA is actually just due to certain eating habits within a family over generation to generation, or smoking habits and different things like that can alter the DNA, but it can actually be switched back through changes of diet or changes of the conditions in their environment and so on. Interesting. Well, I like this meteorite idea. I mean, if you're going to create a reactor that's destined for space, makes sense you want to start out with substances that came directly from space. Ultimately everything on Earth came from space at one point or another. It all came from a star system.
That's true, but it's how I guess the field strengths are encoded. So that material is not in the matter state, and I just kind of proved it right there.
It came from the principal core. Maybe it was closer to the principal core of our galaxy, let's say.
Yeah. So when matter's created in a planetary system, it's I guess some of that matter is in the densest, least energetic state. But when it's formed in the vacuum condition, it has that higher coherent structure. That's closer to the principal field. So I think it's a nanomaterial, and it'd be really nice to see what kind of GANs that produce. So yeah, one day.
Interesting.
Oh, so I'd like to share the plasma pod with everyone, if that's okay, really quick.
Yes, please do. Thank you. Now, is your plasma pod for sale? Is that what I saw, or what's? Is that something?
Yes, yes, it is. But I don't think I could give this away. People just they look at me. You know, I try to talk about nano coating, and they just look at me funny. So I don't even know what they're gonna do with a plasma pod.
Beauty's in the eyes of the beholder, kind of thing. You have to have a feel for it. Let's see. Let's have a look. Okay, this is you lying down in the plasma pod, right? So I think we lost your audio. Seems to be.
Sorry, yeah, I muted myself there.
Okay.
So I actually had this design in my head about 2 months after studying the technology, and I have no idea where it came from. It wasn't from my knowledge at the time. It came from my soul, and this thing is it's really incredible. When I first had it going, the veins in my side temples would pulsate so strong, and I was tuning into the fields and I was integrating them, and I couldn't be anywhere in the house without feeling it. So I actually went outside and I walked down the block when I had it on and when I was still feeling it, because I wanted to see how far it is. And I was 10 houses down. So in metric, I think that's about maybe 200 meters and about 600 feet. So it's quite strong. It has two flows. It has a gravitational, this was my thinking at the time, create a counter gravitational flow from the feet all the way to your stomach, and then spin it the opposite way, magnetical clockwise all the way to my head. And I'm using right now, and it's what I've been using for the last year and a bit, is ocean GANs. And Mr. Keshe has explained that ocean GANs has a high content of CO2, zinc, and the GANs of water. And we're mostly water, so it really is kind of a perfect mixture, but it also has everything else that the man needs, he said. I think it was the 97th Keshe workshop, he explains ocean GANs in more detail. So there's a DC pump. I think it's a 10th, or maybe it's, yeah, I think it's a 10th horsepower, and it pumps about close to 8 liters. There's 72 windings per side, or per pole, and I think I worked it out. It's about 9 feet of winding per one, so that's a lot of tubing. It's a lot of GANs, and I was thinking that this creates sort of what Armin was showing, that shielding effect. And this is what I'm going to put out to the folks here, is that you could make a smaller setup with tubing, fill different GANs with it. I don't think you have to have it spinning, but spinning it creates a more coherent field. And you feel it as soon as you flick on the pump. It's just like, no matter where I am, it's
just to be clear, does the whole structure rotate, or only the GANs gets pumped through it?
Yeah, it's funny. I get asked that question a lot. Just the GANs.
Okay.
Yeah. So I've had amazing experiences in here, and I've had amazing testimonials from, gosh, maybe 20 people. One cancer patient about 2 months ago went inside for 15 minutes, and he felt the shift in his lungs, and he does not know what a nano coating is. I was trying to explain to him that every atom inside of you has a magnetical gravitational strength, and it just went over his head. So he humbly agreed to go inside because I care about him. He's a good friend, and he was just relaxing in there for 15 minutes, and he said halfway through it, he felt a shift in his lungs, and I was standing outside 10 feet from it, and I felt the shift in my lungs. I felt the shift. Probably for the next week, actually, I was feeling it in my lungs. So it's interesting. We're all interconnected, and this field that we're producing creates that network. And so, yeah, so I could ramble on so much about this. It's just, it's so cool, and maybe I'll let others share for the time being. But I'm going to experiment with my reactors in here and maybe pump out different GANs, but it is for sale, but I'm probably going to have to give it away. Hopefully someone will take it, because I want to go out to Toronto and work with this stuff, because Winnipeg, there's not a lot of people interested. So sorry, I'll just share a little bit more of the design, I guess.
Absolutely, go ahead. Don't feel you need to apologize. This is what it's all about here. Is in this group is sharing this exact same thing. So this is wonderful. Thank you for doing so.
Yeah, I'm really excited over this stuff. It's my life, and I've kind of given up everything, invested everything into this. So it's my life now. So it's really nice.
Welcome,
yeah.
Welcome to the
club. Yeah, thanks, Rick, for actually having this. It's gonna be my new thing now, is more plasma talks and being more involved with the community. So it's a blessing what you're doing.
Excellent. Well, I think there's quite a few people in Toronto that you'll be able to connect with, and I expect that'll be probably the major hub of activity for manufacturing and for other such connections for the Keshe Foundation in the future.
I really, it's a nice job what you have done. It's
thank you.
I would love to see the process of the thinking process and how you know.
Hello?
Yeah, we lost you there, Stella.
Oh.
About the thinking process. And that
yeah.
Build it,
Sure. So, like I said, I was only 2 months into this stuff, but I've been fascinated with energy, and I've had so many great experiences that I know that there's a torus flow connecting everything. That's just the natural structure of how energy moves. So I had that in mind when I wanted to build this healing device. It was for my mother that has a condition that basically our system can't fix. They can't do anything. So that was my motivation. But I just wanted to actually strengthen your own internal field. So I was thinking, if I push the energy up through you, it would increase it. And it was just actually just a really simple idea, and it's kind of cool. I made this design, I was building it, and life always sends you the signs when it's correct. So Mr. Keshe actually explained this device, not physically, but he explained the actual condition it creates. It was in the 147th workshop. It's at the 2-hour and 41 mark if you want to listen to it in full. He says this cuts you off from the earth. You're actually shielded. So I would associate it with being in the vacuum, being in space, and all that you're left with is your soul. So I've had people go in there and immediately have distress or some sort of issues come up. A lot of it is physical injuries. They'll feel old physical injuries just start to remanifest. and some emotional issues will manifest almost instantaneously. So one friend can only go in here for 3 minutes because he had some abuse as a child. So it actually scares people when they see this. They don't want to go in it if they're not if they don't want to get in touch with themselves. So it was actually just a really simple thought. I just wanted to strengthen one's own field, and he said that you could just create a pool of plasma water and just put a stool in it and sit in it. And that's really what he was explaining that this does. It creates that shielding effect.
Maybe we could listen to that passage. Where was it?
Yeah.
Can I ask a question? Can I ask a question?
Stella, just a minute. Can I get the reference from your?
Yeah, 147.
Mm-hmm.
And it's at the 2 hour and 41 mark.
Okay, I'll look that up and try to get that set up, and we'll listen to it. Okay, go ahead, Stella.
If I understanding what you explaining, by being in the plasma isolation, so the person is connected to their own field, and they're able to somehow, the emotional body, right, brings to the awareness all traumas that they were in the body, like, you know, like hidden storage as a memory, correct?
Yeah, so Rick will cue it up and you can listen to it, but he says that it's a peace island, and I tell everyone that you're basically soaking in your own soul. So this energy works with zero-time communication. So you're reintegrating all that memory, emotional, physical, whatever you experienced, and maybe even in, well, if you believe in past lives. So it's an interesting time portal. I had an outer body experience when I fell asleep in here, and I was floating above Standing Rock about 50 feet up. And I was there about 2 months prior to it in physical, back in December, when they were just getting the easement denied. And yeah, he said that you could cure cancer instantaneously with this, basically. But you have to be open to it. And that's just the main principle with anything. If you don't allow the fields to come in, if you don't realign to your soul, you can block it out. So some people go in here and don't feel really anything. It's that's just up to your own your free will. So but yeah, you're right. That's basically how it works.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay, let me. I'll share the screen to play this.
Okay.
Just get it set up a little better. Okay, now you mentioned that 2 hours 41 minutes, basically. So we're just before that, and let's see what's being said at this point. Turn the volume down.
You create that condition. This is why you put gravitational or alkaline with acidic. If you understand this transition of the alkaline, we're talking about the tritium. You can create a tritium that is both alkaline and acidic. Very much so. But you can create a condition for it to become alkaline or acidic by introduction of the next neutron, or what you call tritium in a matter state. By changing the position or direction of the rotation of the second reactor or a fourth reactor, you dictate the field strength. It's exactly like what you create as a amino acid. The separation of the fields or the reactors from each other, it's a dictator of the positioning. This goes back to what we call 129 test, Tesla test. Armin got the mixture so precise that it was perfectly controlled. We didn't touch it. We didn't need to touch it.
So Rick,
But
sorry.
every time we changed the environment, it responded according to the environment.
That was a nice little brief expert you explained about the star formation top reactor, but I was off one workshop. Sorry, it was the 146, but that was actually a nice little knowledge
Yes.
drop there.
Well, you could probably go to any random workshop and get something out of it if we focused on it. So, okay, let me see if I can go 146. Get that up.
Sorry, it's just so many time frames trying to.
No problem. Let's see, look at it. This one should do. Okay, now go to the same. Okay.
That's good. Yeah, right there.
So it's shared, okay, and you got that. Okay, let's see what happens here.
Any of you, I'm sure you all know, it's traditionally that in the East, when somebody has a high temperature, we put them in the water and we put some alcohol, small amount of alcohol in the water, and you leg the upper leg from knee down with the mixture of alcohol, 10 or 15%, with the water. Very slowly, it takes all the temperature away. And you find people with a high fever within minutes lose all their fever. Reverse this knowledge backwards. What about if you make a gas water and you stand in it? Gas of CO2, gas of mixture of CO2 and zinc oxide, and you transfer the whole, what I call, exactly like what we do with the plants, we do with the vegetation. We've seen in agriculture that when we put CO2 to the plants, the whole plant changes, the whole environment of the plant changes, and they give a better harvest because we now done with what I call greenhouses. Why don't we put that and make it as part of us? It's the root. When you put gas water in and you stand in it or you put your feet in it, you separate with a new condition from the earth. That is what is you. You have created that separation with a new system, with a new plasma. In a way, you position yourself in respect to plasma. You don't need to stand in it, but if you put a tray or a bucket of, let's say, Gans liquid and put a little stool in it that you don't touch it, but you stand in the middle of it, this gives you a total atmosphere, a different atmosphere. Put the zinc oxide in it, put CO2 in it, put copper oxide, liquid Gans in it, liquid plasma, and feel the change. Measure the change. This is something vital you need to do. And a few months ago, I talked about this in one of the teachings. You create an environment, this is yours, this is your shell where you're at peace. Change the ratio of the CO2 and the zinc oxide and see how you find happiness, how you find peace. This is what we heard from our Chinese friend. It's time to make an environment for us. We talked with the doctors with the rooms where there are gas system rotating. This anybody can do anywhere in their house. Anywhere, anywhere. You find high temperature, you find burn, you find not being at peace emotionally. Make your own island and walk into it. Stand in it. Don't touch it. Let its field bring balance to you.
Okay. I can do that.
Anybody can do that.
Yes. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. But the thing is, this is what we need to extend the knowledge. That's what I said. The teaching of making is finished. Now the depth of the knowledge has to open up.
Yeah.
You don't need to touch, you don't need to drink. You change the way we've seen in our agriculture. Our people, and as I explained to them in their teaching, you don't need a greenhouse. The greenhouse now is a problem for us. You don't need to have, because now the field create a shelter, an environment. I was in a meeting yesterday with some people, and I explained to them, the guy said, we do this with the plants, you don't need fertilizer. I said, now, greenhouse is a problem for us. Can you please switch off your microphone? Whoever's got it open. So we need to understand, now we create a new greenhouse for the plants. That's why they grow so fast. That's what I was explaining to our people in agriculture. Greenhouse now is a problem, because now we understand we create a condition that it attracts amino acid, and now we know plants use amino acid of the atmosphere to live. With putting a shield on it, with like a greenhouse, we reduce their interaction. So it's the same with the human body. Put a bucket in the garden, stand in the middle of it on an island without touching it. Change the atmosphere, see if you feel different. It's the emotion changes. If you find peace within yourself, if you find through it creating a peaceful environment for yourself, you start finding your peaceful emotion. And then you find a path to your soul. What I was teaching this morning. It's you who got to understand 80% of the information carried in your emotion comes outside the neurosystem. The neurosystems are for the physical part. And I explained this before many times. And you think, I feel pain because I touched it. That's the physical part. You haven't touched the emotional part of it, which goes outside. It's too slow. The neurosystems are matter state things with the Gans that they take time. Linkage outside is faster. Create your own greenhouse. Stand there with your family. Bring peace in. Then you find out the life changes. The dimension of the expectation. And you find what I said this morning. That peace which you're looking for, because you change the environment around you. And stand outside. In the house is too much. Everything is restricted. Stand it open on it. Then you're connected to the universal energy. The houses we have built has become the cage for the soul of the man, and not only its physicality. Because they touch our emotion. They control our emotion. Stand outside, you're connected. You see a different light. You earn and you gain different knowledge into the universe. This is how it's done by many in the universe.
Yeah, that's basically it. He sums it up, but he goes on and calls it the Peace Island. So it'd be really nice to see that thing outside, and I'm still planning on doing that. Maybe when I do move it, I'll set it up outside. And
how do you think it would weather okay, or would it need a cover or some sort of?
Yeah, depending on the materials you use to build it. So in Canada, it's frozen 6 months out of the year. So you know, I wish I could leave it outside, but yeah, it was.
I wonder if the Gans would freeze. That would be a good test for it.
Can I ask a question?
Go ahead.
Okay, so if you have a home, let's say, and if you want to create, I mean, is it possible to build a shield so you can create this field around a home?
Yeah, and Tom Salas did that. You know, he fed his whole surrounding environment plasma fields, and look what it did for him. You know, it survived a category whatever hurricane, and that's what I would recommend doing is water everything around your house with plasma water, but maybe flood your basement too.
Well, this is very interesting. I think everybody, this is something that is important for everybody, especially with the new electromagnetic field of the telecommunications and all that.
So yeah, it really is amazing for the health aspect, but I want to experiment with it further. And I did do one agricultural experiment with the pod, and I grew sprouts. It was a really simple experiment. I had controls, and then I had different containers for one on the south pole of the pod, the middle, and then the north. And then I had them with the pod on and with the pod off, and I would do it, I think, for 30 minutes a day. And nothing, just distilled water. And so it was actually quite substantial. The sprouts inside the pod grew, I'd say 25 to 30% bigger than the ones that were outside away from the pod. But the one that had the pod on and inside the center, that one was literally double the growth. It had double the roots length, and it lasted probably a week longer for it dying, because I just kind of like let them be after. I stopped watering it, and that one lasted. It was still green when everyone else was turning brown, and they kind of gave up. So that one lasted a week longer than everything else. So
Thank you.
Is there something else you'd like to share with us, Thomas? We got a lot, but
I've been working a lot with this technology, and I've been kind of keeping it to myself and my friends and family. So I think it's about time I fessed up what I've been working on for the last 2 years.
A closet experimenter, eh?
Yeah, it's hard getting people involved with it, so I kind of just, stuck to myself. But yeah.
Hi, Rick. Hi, guys.
It gets easier as you go along because all your friends drop off, and then you get to spend more time with what you really want to do with the experiments.
Well, that's basically how it is now. I've been alone working on my own accord for the last year, probably. So, sorry, was that Jalal?
Yeah, Jalal, I think. Yeah. Go ahead.
Hi, guys. I have a question, and I want all of you to think about it, because it is, and I want the answer in the plasmatic way, please, if you can. The Atlantic Ocean and the Pacific Ocean, why they don't join together? Why they don't mix?
That's a great question. Obviously, there is a plasmatic answer to it.
So please think about it, and don't tell me now, because I don't know. So in a week or 2 weeks or whatever you get answer, please answer.
I thought they did mix. I thought the currents went around the bottom of South America and around the bottom of Africa, and all the world oceans mixed together.
Yeah, but this one in the top, they don't mix. And actually you can see it. There's two different colors, so they don't mix.
What do you mean by?
there's a defining border when the two actually physically meet. I know what Jalal's talking about.
Well, you get different salinities and they won't mix, and you can get different.
In salinity, you can mix two salinity together.
Well, I'm talking like you get ice melt water and or river water coming into ocean water and stuff, and they separate into layers. One will go to the, I forget which one goes up and which one goes down, but they don't always mix together. And
yeah, that happens locally here in Vancouver, where the Fraser River comes into the ocean. It actually maintains freshwater and saltwater sort of barrier between them before they mix together.
Rick, can you bring a picture for it, please, if you can?
For the
Atlantic Ocean and Pacific Ocean?
Okay, let's see what Wikipedia has for us. Do you want to see the currents? Is that what you're interested in? Or how do you want to look at it, the separation? There's large underwater features. We don't want that. There's ways to divide the ocean. So you can see the, well, you could if this thing would stop.
in Wikipedia, under ocean currents, there's some maps showing the currents.
Yeah, this shows the separation, but I can't get it to stop doing its cycling thing, so that's not too useful. Ocean current, is that what it was you were saying in Wikipedia?
Yeah, that's what I searched for.
I'll just add something that I came across recently listening to God knows what workshop, I don't remember what, but Mr. Keshe was explaining that the tides actually is not from the moon, it's actually a plasmatic function because of the structure of the earth itself. So if the movement of the waves is working on that condition, then I guess that would be why that there's these different separations, what we're seeing.
Is this what you mean, Jalal, what we see now with the circulation? For example, in the North Atlantic is sort of a circular circulation, and the South Atlantic is a circular thing going on in a counterclockwise or counter to that direction, counterclockwise direction. And then the Pacific is in, again, in its own rotational direction. Everything's counter-directional, I noticed, in terms of the South Atlantic and South Pacific are rotating counter to each other, and the North Atlantic and the North Pacific also rotate counter to each other. But yet the North Pacific and South Pacific, well, actually, they're going in two different directions too. So there's like pairs. Rotating counter and together, sort of two vortex pairs in that case. Okay, so what's your point about the oceans there, Jalal? How are you seeing it? You might not be able to talk right now. Could be busy at work or something there.
The ocean currents also, you get upper and lower currents where you get cold water below and warm water above and stuff like that.
Yes, right. Layering and so on.
Yeah.
That's important too, because the density of water is a maximum at about 4 degrees Celsius, I believe. So as water goes to a certain density, and it has to be at that temperature and so on. It's a lot going on there.
So the question is, are those currents driven by eddies of plasma energy from down deeper in the earth?
Well, I did notice something, a couple of things back here. Was it this one or the previous one?
Yeah, well, they probably don't talk about the plasma eddies that we know about.
Well, actually, what they do talk about is the subsurface oceans. Oh, this is on Saturn's moon, actually. Wrong planet. Oh, I see. These are Europa. I thought these were Earth. Okay, Earth is at the top part here. This is, maybe it's related somehow. The I don't even know the word amphidromic points. Amphidromic points showing the direction of tides per incrementation periods, along with resonating directions of wavelength movements.
You got to be a PhD to understand that one.
The curved arcs around the amphidromic points show the direction of the tides, each indicating a synchronized 6-hour period. So it seems like there's these points that are kind of a neutral point where the tides are evaluated differently. I don't know. I'm not sure what an amphidromic point is to start with, but I see a bunch of points on the map here, and it kind of looks like plasma to me. All looks like plasma to me. Does it not? Does it not look like some sort of complex plasma here?
I think you're right.
Rick, can you go back to the previous picture? Because I think on the northern hemisphere, above the equator, everything is turning clockwise, and below the equator in the southern hemisphere, everything is moving anti-clockwise. And maybe this is because the North Pole, the magnetic fields come out, so it's magnetic. And in the South Pole, everything is going in, so it's gravitational. And then at the equator, they change from magnetical to gravitational. So maybe that's the reason why these two oceans will not mix, because the one is magnetical, the other one is gravitational.
I think it has more to do with the Coriolis force.
That's why the planet is flying through space. You can see it, you know, there's a center equator, there's different forces going on the top hemisphere and the bottom hemisphere. They're interacting with each other, and Mother Earth has worked it out, and she's a spaceship and we're on it, and it's working.
So far, so good. Yeah.
Now you just need to find the commander who has the control.
Wow. I hope someone's sitting in the captain's seat.
Well, maybe it turns out that we are all the captain.
Well, if we are all one, it's easy. Then we are the captain.
There you go.
I think the captain's name is Gaia.
She is the stewardess, maybe, hey?
I don't know if I would say that about her. Stewardesses are kind of up in arms these days for low wages, actually. It was headlines yesterday.
Yes, but they really run the ship, don't they?
Ship, so to speak, yeah.
With their service.
Mm-hmm.
Even they serve coffee to the captain.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, as Jalal says, something we can think about as far as the field effects go and all of the ins and outs of that. It's interesting. Okay, we're getting on to like 3.5 hours here. I think it's probably about time to shut down. Anybody else have something interesting they would like to bring up? And Thomas, I'm sure you got a bunch of things, but maybe next week you can also contribute some more of your thoughts and devices and pictures or whatever you've got. That would be great.
That sounds good. I have the star formation up and running now, but I'll save that for next week.
Okay, great. Look forward to it. And we will probably want to know more about the actual, what do you call it? The mechanics behind your creation there as well. Do you have any drawings, like 3D drawings or other data like that we could have a look at maybe at that time as well? Probably got some files like the 3D printer files or something.
Yep, I made that all myself and designed it, so I got all that.
Yeah. Nice. Maybe we could have a look at some of that too. Okay, well, let me get my video back on. Any other questions for Thomas or myself or anyone else, or anything else, any other burning issues that you like to get off your chest now or whatever? Was it complete for you at this point, Thomas, or was there more you wanted to show today?
I think I shared enough for this week. I think I took up half the video so far. So
yeah, well, it's not a big deal as far as the amount of time goes. It's just we're getting a little long into it now, and might be good to wrap up now. And
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know how you do it so often. You know, hosting all these workshops, and you're staying up so late all the time.
Yeah, well, the secret is I sleep in the daytime a lot, or or I just walk around completely stunned. That's my secret, actually, is to pretend I'm awake during the daytime. But it may not, just because you see me walking around and talking does not necessarily mean I'm awake. So I'm in a state of shock half the time. But it works somehow, and I am grateful to be at this post, the post that I perform at, as far as being a host and the workshops and interacting in many ways that I do with the Keshe Foundation. It's great, and I'm great to hear. It's great to hear you also getting the bug there, Thomas, and you know, following your passion at this time. You know, actually leaving the area you're in because there's not enough plasma stimulation for you, and heading off to seek your fortune. And that's great. And I'm sure you'll have wonderful adventures because you've got a really positive attitude about the whole thing. And you've obviously gotten bitten by the plasma bug, like many of us have. And well, good luck with it.
Thanks, Rick. I look forward to going further and sharing everything with you guys.
Yeah, as many of us, you'll probably lose some of your friends, but you'll gain plenty of new ones as well. So it's all part of the game.
Thomas, just don't go to planet Zeus between now and next week.
Okay? I can't promise anything.
I know you can't, but we'd really like you to stay around.
Thanks.
At least if you do, at least send us a postcard, eh?
Yeah, will do.
Thank you so much.
Cheers.
Yes, thank you, Rick, and thank you, Thomas, too.
Well, thanks to everybody for participating today. It's great to when people can.
I say thank we.
To contribute. What was that?
I say thank we.
Thank we. Yes, that's your phrase, isn't it? Thank we. Okay, well, I think it's been a full workshop for today, and again, thanks to everybody for attending. And it's Keshe Plasma Reactor Group for Tuesday, March 27th, 2018. Next plasma group will be into April already. Holy cow, years flying by. It's all good.
But we have 28, not 27.
Well, still, yes, it is the 28th now. That's right. Started out the 27th here. It's now March 28th in most parts of the world, even on the west coast of Canada. Alrighty, sounds good. Take care, everyone, and I will see you again next time. Rick out.